says I didn't understand that, so the mill stands. What's wrong, then? Semyaza says sorry, of course you couldn't understand me. I got excited and, thus, spoke in my native language. Billy says aha, so Araimo means stop. Semyaza says no, it means halt, that's the difference. Billy says but what's the matter, then? Do you have something against it if I properly bring the box up to speed once or if I let it circle around at all? You could have, nevertheless, said that directly. Semyaza says I have nothing to object to that because I've already known for a long time that you have endeavored to be able to fly the ship once. And I also know very well that you can do it. But did you pay attention to the speed just now? Billy says of course, it was just less than 290,30 kilometers per hour. I didn't want to grind the mill any further because of the time and so on. You even said yourself that it is very dangerous if one exceeds the speed of light with the normal drive or simply at all, without diving, at the same time, into hyperspace. Semyaza says sure you actually kept it in mind. Billy says should I lie to you, then? Semyaza says to me, that would be something completely foreign to you. Sorry, I needlessly excited myself. I felt as though you hadn't considered the facts regarding the speed. But that obviously isn't so, as you say. You can steer my ship calmly, if you like. But please pay attention here. If you should lose control, then simply press these 3 contact points in the grid. By these, everything turns to the 0 position and the automatic control mechanism regulates everything within a split second. Thus, no dangers can appear. But despite everything, please pay attention to the speed. Billy says done, girl. So have no fear. Semyaza says good, then now, I'll devote myself to the drawing. Billy says that's nice, then I also want another time. Semyaza says but please note my instruction. Billy says of course, nevertheless, don't worry all the time. I certainly don't act carelessly. Semyaza says I will probably never understand your type, but you Earth human beings are all a bit strange in this way. Billy says you mean because of the sense of adventure and such. Semyaza says sure, it's something completely foreign to me. Billy says we earthworms are, after all, still a type of ancient swashbuckler, at least some of us. The unknown simply beckons us, and the harder life hits us, the more we can enjoy it. I will teach you this all right, perhaps when we shake a dinosaur's paw. Semyaza says may reason keep me from that. Billy says you see, that's exactly what you have to turn off, for it inhibits everything in such matters because it generates anxiety. Reason tells you that a dinosaur is an evil beast, but the intellect says that the little creature only acts crazy when it feels excited. Thus, if we shake its paw quite peacefully, then it will start to be happy, but not to turn around. Semyaza says I don't understand your humor. Billy says my words are meant seriously. Semyaza says. Billy says look, your reason tells you or told you that I could rev up your mill over the speed of light, which is why you also got excited. After my explanation, however, you calmed yourself down, for your intellect taught you, through my explanation, that you don't need to be afraid because I really took into account the factor that caused you anxiety. This means, then, that you have to see the facts exactly as they actually are. Of course, you can also be mistaken once, and then the salad is simply baked and everything is in the vinegar. Moreover, what is 290,30 kilometers per hour anyway? After all, it's just a breeze compared to the speed of light, which is, indeed, about 300,30 kilometers per second. Semyaza says you say that so easily, but I can't deny you the logic in it. Maybe I do actually let myself be guided too much by reason in certain things, without considering, at the same time, the intellectual concerns in a proper measure. Billy says certainly, but these wise sayings also weren't cultivated in my own field. Svarth already taught them to me, namely when I was still a boy. Semyaza says, nevertheless, you are more developed in them and in their observance than I am. It may well be because of our high level of development that we have a different nature in such concerns. With certainty, our somewhat finer dimension also exerts a certain influence on it. Sometime I will have to talk with my people about it because I think that a different forming in these things would be of use for us. Billy says, so you, therefore, suddenly believe. Semyaza says, you split my words. You know their meaning very well. Billy says, of course, I was just surprised that you've already sunk so much into our way of speaking. On the other hand, I'm also surprised that you suddenly speak so openly of your finer dimension, for you yourself have forbidden me from doing this up to now. Semyaza says, my explanation still gives no further clues. Billy says, that's right, therefore, let's leave that. So let's continue. You draw, and I try to convert the mill into scrap metal. Semyaza says, if you, at the same time, leave the earth out of play. Billy says, who? Semyaza says, ha 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 ha. Billy says, I understand, you switch very quickly. But I'm extremely glad that you strive for the type of us earthworms. Semyaza says, it is much easier than I had assumed. Billy says, but now, let's actually do this. It takes 16 minutes before Semyaza is finished with her drawing, and during that time, I wildly circle around with the ship, but unfortunately, only around the earth and the moon, which, to me, are things that are always in the way. Semyaza says, here you have your wish, Jehovah. Billy says, so that is this special hero, this fellow just doesn't look friendly. Semyaza says, that is quite correct. Billy says, it was probably the best solution, that he was deposed by force. Semyaza says, sure. Billy says, if there's still enough time, I would still have a few questions. Semyaza says, just ask, there's still enough time at our disposal. Billy says, good, I've been occupied with some of the things that you transmitted to me with the last contact. Essentially, it concerns the contactees. You named 21 of these for me. For another 3, you said that for certain reasons, you weren't allowed to speak of them yet, so therefore. Semyaza says, because first, several facts still have to be clarified. Billy says, nice and good, but it still doesn't make sense to me that only these 21 or 24 should be the only ones who actually had or have contact with extraterrestrials. Semyaza says, I explained to you, nevertheless, that I only named for you those who are not of very great importance. Besides these, however, there are still some other Earth human beings who had and still have contact with extraterrestrials. However, their significance is even less important, whereby I address their mediocrity of tasks. But with this, you must not take it that no significance at all may be ascribed to them, for that truly isn't so. They also form a part of the whole, but only in a much smaller way than the ones mentioned to you by name. In addition, there are even scientists, authors, and filmmakers who must be designated as contactees, for they are influenced by us and others through telepathic impulses, in order to be serviceable toward progress and enlightenment. Billy says, aha, so that means that among the few true, officially known contactees, there are still at least some who must be designated as real contact persons. Semyaza says, sure, there are even very many of these according to your concepts, but they are not of very great importance, such as those named by me in particular, through whom certain things had to be done and be invented, or who served or should have served for the enlightenment in regards to the existence of extraterrestrial human life, but which, unfortunately, was not and is not always the case. Billy says that is finally a bit clearer. Thus, your words mean that we may not interpret your remarks about few contact persons in such a way that only the 21 or 24 named by you are genuine. Semyaza says sure, there are even several other but not officially known contact persons, or, more exactly said, a few thousand, but their significance is very low. Of somewhat greater significance are only 24 of those, and to be sure, you are not yet named, however, for you have an extremely great task and responsibility through self-determination, and you are also the only one who has physical and fully conscious contact with us. Translator's note: I think it's important to note the major distortions contained in the translation of Semyaza's sentences numbered 123 through 131 above, which is found in Message from the Pleiades Volume 2 MFTP Volume 2, since it is the only major English translation that has prevailed and that has been disseminated for so long. In sentence number 123, Semyaza states that she only named those who are not of very great importance, whereas MFTP Volume 2 has her saying that those named are of great or greater importance. Semyaza then says in sentence number 125 that there are others who have had contacts, but such contacts are even less important than the ones specifically named, whereas MFTP Volume 2 includes some 100 figure and states that these contacts are simply less important than the first ones, which MFTP Volume 2 already designated as of great or greater importance. In sentence number 129, Semyaza again affirms that those named by her in particular were not of very great importance, and then lists the not very great things that were accomplished or that were intended to be accomplished through them. MFTP Volume 2 omits all of these things and again describes the ones specifically named as being important. In sentence number 131, Semyaza reaffirms her intention of saying that those who were specifically named were only of somewhat greater significance than all the rest, and MFTP Volume 2 omits the somewhat in its parallel sentence, in order to ascribe greater significance to the 21 or 24 contactees mentioned. Thus, there is clear evidence that the editor of the translated portion found in Message from the Pleiades Volume 2 deliberately omitted and distorted some of Semyaza's words, in order to make it seem that Semyaza ascribed a greater significance to the 21 or 24 contactees mentioned than she did in truth. Billy says it is really becoming crazy with you, as you can't be a little more specific. Must you always first provide only partial information, then? In this way, we can come to wrong views. Semyaza says that was never in my mind. Billy says I know, you probably thought that we could become clever from your information and piece everything together ourselves. But that actually wasn't so. Semyaza says I am very sorry. Unfortunately, I often have very great trouble adapting myself into your stage of thinking. But in the future, I will increasingly try to avoid misunderstandings. Thus, I would like to give you the data regarding the contact persons again, in order to eliminate all misunderstandings. Earthly contact persons of not very great importance are those 21 whom I named for you in particular. In addition, however, there are 3 other important human beings, whose names I'm not allowed to announce to you yet. Besides these, you are to be named as the most important factor of all, for you have to fulfill the mission of the delivery of the spiritual teaching, which is why you were already prepared since your earliest childhood for your prophethood. In addition, there are still somewhat more than 17,30 Earth human beings who, completely unconsciously, stand in impulse telepathic connection with extraterrestrial intelligences. Of these, there are a few thousand who are known in smaller or larger circles and groups for the fact that they maintain out of suppositions, but they aren't certain of these to stand or to have stood in contact with extraterrestrial life forms. These, however, aren't known to the world public but only in private circles. Besides these, there are still thousands of other human beings to be mentioned, who have become known to the world public for the fact that they have come into visual contact, through observations of aircraft of extraterrestrial life forms, and can still partly continue such contacts because they are attentive sky observers. Many thousands of these, who have not been named in particular, live in the countries of Germany, Austria, Poland, Russia, China, Australia, New Zealand, America, South America,